Somebody not me has an open mic and is getting notification clicks into the audio stream.
All right. I think I'm here. Am I here? Good afternoon, folks. I'm trying to see if we have our stream up and ready before we get started with our 2025 ARIN Board of Trustees Candidate Forum. I'm waiting for a hi sign from my producer to make sure we are live and online. We are good. Awesome. So welcome and thank you. I'm pleased to welcome candidates for this year's election for the Board of Trustees, as well as our moderator, Michael Abuela, for our candidate forum. We're going to be spending time getting to know the candidates a little bit better and hopefully helping folks to prepare their thoughts on how to cast their ballots here in a couple of weeks. We'll close up today with a few announcements afterward. Please be reminded that there is not an opportunity for audience participation, but we are recording this session and we'll be publishing the link on the ARIN Elections website. So you can always check back there or point people to it if they're looking to view this session and weren't able to attend. So with that, if I can find Michael. Michael, would you care to join us?
Yes.
All right. I am going to go away and turn it over to you.
Excellent. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, wherever you're watching this from or when you're watching it. Welcome again to the 2025 ARIN Board of Trustees Candidate Forum. This is the second time that we are doing this format, and we are hoping that this will be an excellent opportunity for our candidates to introduce themselves to you, the ARIN community. You can hear a little bit more about them, get to know them a bit better, and also hear about what they have planned for ARIN if they have the privilege to serve the ARIN community. Just as a reminder for how this is going to go forward, each candidate will have about 14 minutes, so we're going to try to keep that very fair and everybody have the same amount of time. I'm going to ask each candidate at the beginning to introduce themselves for up to about 3 minutes. We'll have about 9 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll have some closing remarks from each of the candidates. We're going to go through this from alphabetical last name order. And our goal here is really to provide a fair and balanced opportunity for all of you to get to know our candidates, to be able to hear from them directly, and hopefully get to know them a bit better so you can have a more informed vote. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And our first person that we're going to have is Christopher Holbert. So if he could get on camera and unmute. And then, yes, so Chris, if you'd like to take up to 3 minutes here to introduce yourself and to the ARIN community, and then we'll start the clock once you get going.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. Hello to the ARIN community. Thank you so much to ARIN for giving me this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Christopher Holbert. I work with a company called Adrex. We are an IP number facilitator. I am the CFO in that company, so my background is deeply versed in finance and accounting. I started my career in Deloitte & Touche as an auditor. From there, I went to work in the Taipei office of Deloitte and Touche after studying Chinese, which I was sent to Deloitte from Deloitte to study Chinese in China. Worked as an auditor and as a consultant in Taiwan. Later, I returned to China, started my own consulting firm, and then worked for various number of firms in different capacities: VP of Finance, CFO, also one time extent as a CEO. These were for publicly traded companies, so they were companies based in China but publicly traded in the United States. So I do have extensive experience in financial statements, internal controls. I look forward to maybe serving on the board and bringing some of the knowledge and expertise that I have to the ARIN board.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Christopher, and great to meet you. I know I've met in person before, so I'm going to go into some questions, and hopefully we'll get to talk about a few issues here. So one of the first things I wanted to ask you is, obviously you have some experience in various fields, and particularly in finance. But when you look at ARIN, what are the top 2 or 3 kind of strategic challenges that ARIN will face over the next 5 years, and how would you think of addressing those?
Some of the strategic challenges I would say would have to do with something that everyone is dealing with, and that's cybersecurity. I know that ARIN also will have to deal with some legal issues that have kind of bubbled up from a different part of the world in Africa, so that could also impact ARIN. From my point of view, what I would want to make sure is that ARIN's finances are as sturdy and as stable as they can be. One of the key pillars of a company when dealing with any adversity is its finances. So, for example, I noticed that ARIN set up a joint RIR stability fund for the issue that's happening in Africa. In order to be able to set up that fund, ARIN's finances would have to be stable. So, yeah, I think that would probably be my contribution to those 2 issues. For example, the other issue that I mentioned, I know that ARIN is rolled out an online authentication function on their website. All those technical, all those technical things, they require money. So that's, IT guys, you need to be staffed up properly to be able to implement those types of things and develop those types of features. So yeah, I believe that having a strong, stable financial pillar is really key to ARIN being able to address any of its future risks.
Excellent. And so let's talk about that a little bit more. And that you said the stable finances. ARIN is a nonprofit organization. So, I know you've worked for some publicly traded companies. ARIN's a nonprofit, and, we're doing this essentially for the public good. And so given that kind of perspective, what are some things you think would help in trying to make sure that ARIN is stable, moving forward? Because of course our mission is quite important. It's, critical infrastructure, and we have to keep doing what we're doing. So what are some things that you would think of in terms of trying to bring that financial stability or maintain the financial stability that you reference?
Sure. I think key to that would be making sure that we are doing things as efficiently as possible from a financial point of view. So I would have to work with operations guys, chief information officers, people of that nature, to make sure that what we're doing is it as efficient as it can be. Something that I did in other organizations where we actually reviewed salaries, and that's something that's extremely unpopular, but make sure that salaries are in line with where the industry is, where with a company with an organization of ARIN's size and with their mission, make sure that salaries are in line, just to make sure, not to say that anyone is being overpaid, but just to make sure we're dotting all of our I's and crossing our T's from that perspective. Internal controls is very important. So, ARIN is all about accountability, especially for nonprofit organizations. I mean, although I do have publicly traded company experience, I also work for the federal government, and I was in charge of drafting their financial statements for the NTSB. So I do have an understanding also from a nonprofit point of view. And sometimes, to be honest, the bar is set even higher for nonprofit organizations. So internal controls would be very key. I'm pretty sure that ARIN probably has really good internal controls, but that's something that I would want to go through with the CFO to just make sure that we don't have any instances that would hurt ARIN's reputation. I mean, ARIN has over many years has worked to build up his reputation. It only takes one incident to kind of impact that.
So you mentioned a bit about, I mean, essentially oversight being one of the things, the roles of the board, right? And so what do you believe is the most critical oversight responsibility of the board? And if you could do it the way you would see is the best, how would you structure that so that the board could fulfill that oversight responsibility?
Probably a couple of critical. Mission is one. So, a lot of organizations, whether they be profit or nonprofit, they will suffer from mission creep. So, basically, what does the ARIN community want? Are we fulfilling that? Are we making sure that we're doing that in an efficient way? I think that would be critical. And then so that's the mission side of it, the like customer kind of like a customer satisfaction side of it. And then the other side of it would be again from the finance point of view. So, how do we make sure that we are structuring things so that the board is operating effectively and efficiently, and the organization is operating effectively and efficiently. Again, it goes back to keeping our costs in line. I mean, that's critical. If you keep our costs in line, then there's an opportunity for us maybe to not have to. And this, I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head, from what I've seen from as an outsider. Maybe you don't have to raise fees, or maybe you don't have to raise fees as much as you would, which I'm pretty sure the ARIN members would welcome. So cost control is very important, I believe.
Excellent. So you mentioned about the community, right? And customer service essentially on that side. From a stakeholder balance perspective, uh, obviously there are diverse interests in ARIN's community. We have ISPs, we have nonprofits, we have large operators, small operators. How would you propose to kind of balance those different interests that the stakeholders have, given that our community it's not a homogenous kind of community, right? So, how would you try to strike that balance?
That's probably one of the most challenging parts of any organization, or for the board of any organization. I think it's just a matter of looking at the reasonableness. For example, for example, stakeholders, or I'm sorry, for example, the ARIN community. So I know that ARIN goes through a process of opening up different ideas to the community. So it's not just one dominant player. For example, I know that again, in another part of the world, there's been this one dominant player that's been mentioned a lot in the news who wants to do a certain thing, and because of the way the RRRs are structured, not just one person can dominate. So I think that ARIN has pretty much, as far as from the users, ARIN has pretty much stricken a balance because it's pretty much a democracy. Like no one can come in and just dominate. So I would say that stakeholder is pretty much like they're kind of self-regulated, to be honest, I would think. As far as other stakeholders, I mean, you have employees, you have some suppliers. Suppliers is pretty easy. You just try to get the best price for suppliers. Maybe open up things for open bid. As far as employees goes, I'm assuming that ARIN probably has this in place. Maybe performance evaluations. Again, you look at what are salaries like outside in the market. So there are different ways, I believe, that ARIN can satisfy certain stakeholders, but also, so to speak, keep those stakeholders in check, just to create an overall good balance.
So we've talked a little bit about some of these kind of overarching things about ARIN, but I want to turn a little bit more to your personal experience, given some of the things that you've shared with us. You mentioned you were over in Asia and spent some time there. Are there experiences or lessons that you've learned while you were there that could bring value to ARIN?
Experiences from Asia that could bring value to ARIN. I would say, well, one of my experiences, maybe I can address this here. I noticed that my evaluation from the third party evaluation company, I was ranked as, I forget the exact term they used, but maybe not demonstrated. And the only thing that I can think of why I would be not demonstrated is because I was involved in a court case for one of the companies that I work for, that I was actually CEO for. We had gone public on the New York Stock Exchange, but we were based in Beijing. I had identified a fraud. I brought the fraud to the board, just following the corporate governance protocol. We weren't able to do what the board, was mandated to do, so we escalated that even further. Now, although that was my role in it, and I believe that I uh, acted as I should have as a CEO, but when you get sued, everyone gets sued. They don't pick people off. So CEO, CFO, all board members, everyone gets sued, and I was included in that case. So I would say that one of my main experiences in Asia was I do believe that internal controls is very important. And in our case, actually, the internal controls worked late, but they did work because we had just gone public, and it was before we were going to issue our first financial statements that I identified the fraud. So I believe that I saved a lot of investors a lot of potential money if, had they invested in us after we issued, financial statements that would not have been correct. So that's one of my main takeaways. Internal controls are very important. I know that they are maybe a bit annoying, but it's one of those necessary, annoyances in life, I believe.
Okay. Well, we just passed the 2-minute mark left on our timer. So I do want to give you a chance to give some closing remarks, before the music starts playing and you want to walk off stage. So please, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you so much, Michael. I just would like to tell everyone, well, from what I've seen in the slate of candidates, I think that either of these people who gets elected, I think Aaron's going to end up with a very good board member. So I want to congratulate everyone, commend everyone for stepping up to try to step in the board on the board. I believe that my experience from a finance point of view, I can add a lot to Aaron's board. I fully intend on bringing all of my experience to the board. I know that it's not a full-time job, but I'll treat it as much as a full-time job as I can, and I'll give it all of my dedication and time.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Christopher. Really thank you for sharing your insights and your thoughts on kind of Aaron's business. We appreciate your time and perspective today, and definitely thank you for putting your hat in the ring to be part of this process. It's part of one of the most important things that Aaron does every year. So thank you for participation. We wish you the best of luck in this, and so we're gonna say goodbye to you and move on to our next candidate. And next up will be Lee Howard. So thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, I see Lee coming online. Hello, Lee.
Hello, Michael.
All right. So as you know, we have a certain format we're following up to. So just like before, I'm going to invite you to spend up to 3 minutes to introduce yourself, and then we'll get into a little bit of a Q&A time. So the floor is yours.
Thanks. I thought what I'd start with is why I've been working on the internet for the past 30 odd years. When I was 12 years old, my family moved. And so I came to a new neighborhood, and I had a hard time adjusting to the kids in the new neighborhood and making friends. And I had a hard time figuring out who my people were and finding community. And that lasted kind of well into college. And in 1990, 91, 92, somewhere in there, I had some folks in college say, you should get on this mini computer that the college has and get on the bulletin board system. And I said, what is that? And I joined it. And they said, you should look at this. You can connect to people at other colleges. Here's UECP mail. You need to know the path to get there. And then very shortly after that, we adopted SMTP mail. And this is much easier. This is fantastic. And then I was introduced to the Usenet and to IRC. And suddenly I was finding community with people around the world. And geography was no longer the primary way for me to find people that could help me figure out what was going on in my life and what I wanted to do and what kinds of things I want to work on. And I said, this is important. The internet is a new critical thing in the world for helping people find and create community. And so I said, I want to work on this. It took me a couple of years to figure out how to get to work on the internet since I was an English and French major. So I did it a little bit the long way around. And then a few years later, I was working at a large ISP, UUNet, and found myself suddenly responsible for, among other things, managing their IP addresses, giving them out to customers, and making sure that people who were giving them to customers were following policies and procedures appropriate for ARIN's policies and procedures, and even before that, Internet's policies and procedures. So we had to, teach people how to do that, and that's sort of how I came here. I have recently retired after a very happy career in the internet industry, so I'm no longer affiliated with any organization, maybe some consulting here and there. But that means that I have no conflict of interest, of course, but it also means that I have time and focus. I will say I've been on the ARIN board before. Those were some challenging but happy years, and I learned an awful lot while I was on the board and an awful lot since then. And so I'm very happy for the possibility to bring that back and again return the service to the community that's been great to me.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Lee. Well, let's get into a few questions here. And so you've obviously been with ARIN before and on the board, and you've been around the industry for quite a while. What do you see? What are a couple of the big issues that you think are facing ARIN over the next 5 years, particularly if you were elected, within your first term? What are some of what are maybe one or two of the biggest issues that you think the board will have to tackle, and what are your thoughts on that and how to address those?
Well, so the first one is not initially the board's problem, is ICP2, the redevelopment of ICP2. I was on the board when we did it the first time around with ICANN and talked about how do we regularize relations between ICANN and the RIRs. Now, the RIRs had more history than ICANN did at that time. And so we kind of looked at ICANN and said, how do we protect ourselves from a rogue ICANN? And to his credit, Vince Cerf said to me, how do we protect ourselves if an RIR goes rogue? And we sort of talked about, yeah, we're going to have to come back and figure out what that would mean. But that's the responsibility of the NRO to do that. Unfortunately, we didn't really come back and do that until now. It's 20 some years later. And so good for us. I'm really glad that the NRO EC had the NC kick that off. But that's going to be really important for the boards of the RIRs to go ratify and validate and make sure that we're doing the right process. So that's key. But there's related issues to that, and some of that is the protection of the RIR system, both in terms of legal risk. Not that I think that we are in any particular legal risk right now, but it's a constant, especially in our region. It's a very litigious region, so we need to make sure that we're being careful about how we do things. I think the most important things that we can do to be careful and mitigate those risks are to make sure that we are implementing processes that are directly following the public policy, the community policy system. So if there's any question about should the contracts say this, should our policies be this, we need to make sure that we are following the community developed processes and doing them consistently. We can't make exceptions, because we make exceptions that opens us up to risk from other organizations. Again, I think very highly of the entire staff. I think they're doing an excellent job, and I think we're in great shape there. But that's going to be one of the key ways we defend ourselves. I think also we probably want to, we have built good relationships with the governments in our region, in particular the larger governments, but I think that our outreach to the Caribbean nations has been pretty good from what I'm seeing. We have a great relationship with the CTU, fantastic. But we need to make sure, I'd like to see us doing some slightly more formal regularization of relationships, just to make sure that we have the acknowledgement of the governments in our region that we are the registry for the North American and parts of the Caribbean and the outlying islands that make up the ARIN region. I think those are the particular ones. I guess the one other thing that I look at is we are about 50% of the world using IPv6. It's been slower uptake than certainly I hoped, but I think that there is increasing risk. The longer the address market goes on, the greater the chance that somebody somewhere messes up a transfer request and makes a transfer that transfers assets that are worth a significant amount of money, and that opens up ARIN to a lawsuit. Now, there's great ways we've worked on protecting ARIN in those cases as well. The Qualified Facilitator Program came out of a conversation about how do we mitigate ARIN's risk there, but it's something we need to pay attention to, and I think that promoting IPv6 is probably a big one for us to continue to mitigate the risks against something bad happening in the IPv4 market.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So you mentioned one thing. Let me get onto one of the things you mentioned, which is community, right? And ARIN has quite a diverse community, and a little bit of an offshoot to this similar question that I asked Christopher about was, as a board member, if you were to be elected and you've served before, how do you balance when you're trying to serve such a wide constituency that you have people from different geographic regions, you have different, kind of incentives, different motivations. You mentioned we have Caribbean members, but we also have Canadians and people in the US. How do you try to strike that balance so that as a board member, you are being responsive and serving the whole community? Because that's a hard thing to do, I think.
Every so often, and I find it typically comes from newcomers who aren't as familiar with the ARIN community and the processes and the people who are involved. Every so often, somebody will say, well, we know ARIN's in the pockets of the big businesses. And they'll name the big evil business of the day and say, we know that they're practically owned by that company. And I always go, whenever that happens, I go back and look at, well, who's on the board, who's on the advisory council, who's attending and participating on the mailing lists. And there's always a significant mix. So it's not just, yes, we do have people from some large companies here, thank goodness, because they represent key constituencies. But we also have people from small companies. There are policies that are proposed, and we hear from WISPs and small fiber ISPs in the region saying, hey, this would really affect us in a bad way. Okay, great. We need to make sure that we are mitigating damage to the organizations that are bringing the internet to new people in our region. Typically we have to have people from hosting and cloud. Academia that's another constituency that I think is often overlooked. And we have both. It's great to see we have both academics and we have people from IT departments in universities and also in corporate IT. And then the other key constituents that I see to make sure is represented are the members of government. And that can include, we've got members of state governments, people participating from the federal governments, plural, and of course, making sure we have people from all kinds of parts of our community. One of the things that I'm careful about is to make sure that if I haven't heard something, especially when it's a structural thing, on the policy development process, that's really the advisory council's job to focus on. I should make sure the process is being heard and that we're considering all those. But I like to make sure that we're reaching out to, hey, I haven't heard from somebody who works for this kind of company or this kind of region. Is there any other perspective that we're missing right now? And to that end, I will also add that I've worked for very small ISPs where there were just 2 of us on staff. And I've worked for very large ISPs where there were tens of thousands of us on staff. And I've even worked at a hosting company for a little while. So I've done various different kinds of work like that. And so I'm sort of able to understand the little differences in points of view that I think people come from.
Excellent. Thank you. So I think we have time for one more question before we hit our closing remarks. So you last served on the ARIN board, several years ago. What are some of the constructive changes that you've seen since the time you were here? And then also, is there anything that you would try to kind of spearhead or look to change in the future as you're moving forward?
Every time I've run for the ARIN board, I've said, I think ARIN's doing a great job. I'm not a candidate of change. I'm not trying to lead major overhauls of the organization. Some of the changes that have happened, I think that we have continuously improved our financial controls. I have to say, I've been delighted to see Nancy Carter as treasurer for the last several years. She's made the process very accessible. I'm going to hang up the phone again because somebody's trying to call me. The financial control has been something that's been very important. I think the transition in leadership has been interesting to watch. ARIN's has had people in the organization, in the staff for a long time. The people have excellent tenure there, great employee retention, good job. And there have been times where we've seen people who've been there for a long time leave, and we are sort of, do we look outside? Do we look inside? So we want to make sure that we're keeping people fresh and keeping the pipeline going. I do find it interesting that one of the things that the board says, we're looking for somebody who has experience with, I forget whether it was succession planning or compensation planning. I found that to be a very interesting point that's going to come up for this coming board.
Excellent. All right. Well, looks like we're running up almost to the 2-minute mark. So I wanted to give you a chance to also give some closing remarks. So the floor is yours, Lee. And thank you for answering all my questions too. So.
Oh, I hope that was all your questions. I'm sure it wasn't. So I really appreciate the time. I really appreciate you and the elections team putting together this forum. This is a great way to, I feel like, reach out to people. I'm fairly well known in this community. I think people, and to people who don't know me, I've always been trying to make myself very accessible. I'm one of the people who, yes, my beard is grayer than it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I started getting involved with ARIN. But I'm still, I love this community. I love hearing the new and fresh perspectives. I've done a lot of different things, a lot of different parts of the internet governance system. It's critical that we keep it multi-stakeholder, as you pointed out. And I'm interested in serving. I've always loved this ARIN community, and serving it has been one of the highlights of my career. So I appreciate the opportunity to potentially continue serving in this capacity.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lee. Again, thank you for your time today and taking time out of your schedule. I know even though you said you're retired, still you have lots of things going on. So we appreciate your time to be part of this forum and to give the community an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better and hear your thoughts on ARIN itself. So, all right. Well, then,
thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much. And we are going to move on to our next person on the list, which is Hank Kilmer. So, Hank, if you could come online.
All right.
Hello, Hank. How are you?
Hello there. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. So, so as you see now, since you're third up, you've seen the kind of format. So I'm going to ask you to do a few introductory remarks, and then we'll go right into some Q&A. So I will give you the floor if you'd like to take up to 3 minutes to introduce yourself to the community.
Sure. Hank Kilmer, I'm currently serving on the board. Term is ending now, and I greatly appreciate the past 3 years here on the board. Been in the ISP side of the community for, since 86 or so, something in that range. It's been a long career for different ISPs of different sizes. I find that supporting this community is incredibly valuable. It is a critical infrastructure piece. It's what I've always focused on as critical infrastructure in my career, building the connectivity, and this is part of it. And so at this point in my career, I'm able to dedicate the time and energy and focus to help ARIN, and I've really enjoyed doing that. Would like to continue to do that. But I bring a lot of the technical side of things from an ISP's perspective, and I bring executive management perspective to the board, and board experience as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into a few questions here. We'll try to get as many as we can in. As you probably heard me ask the other two, I'm going to ask you the same kind of question, and probably for the rest that are coming up. But what are a couple of things that you think are really facing ARIN or the ARIN board in the next 5 years or so, and how do you propose to address those items that you identify?
Well, I think Lee mentioned ICP2. I think, and the changes that are coming, that is going to be one of the biggest things to focus on in this next few years, and adapt to the changes that are coming from that. I think the work that's gone into that has been excellent, but it's not done yet, and it's going to be a very important focus. I think coming out of that, we're going to see a registry system that is even stronger and more robust. But each RIR is going to have their own sort of takeaway of things to work on from that. And, we don't know entirely what that's going to be yet, but I think each IRR is going to have to look at their governance structure and making sure it's as solid as it can be, along with the financial controls with that, and reporting and responsibility to the community. So I think kind of that is the largest issue. The other aspect we've seen with some of the other IRRs is some turnover and in their personnel. And as Lee rightfully pointed out, we have been focused on making sure we have good plans for that as well with ARIN, and that's going to continue to be it's always a work in progress, but it is going to be an important focus on things. The future is not written, so you need to be prepared.
Absolutely. So you brought up something. So let's focus on the first one, which you said ICP2, and how that's going to be the biggest thing. And clearly this process has been going on for a while, and there are some items there that we really need to pay attention to. One of the things is about kind of transparency and trust. And as things go along with the development of the new RAR governance document, how do you propose, or what are some things you think would be helpful in managing and kind of increasing the both transparency, but ultimately the trust by the ARIN community in ARIN, the organization, and the ARIN board, and ARIN as a registry overall?
It's a good question. You always have a balance of you need to have you need to have some private conversations to get to a good resolution, so people feel free to voice maybe controversial opinions or something like that. But at some point, that we are a member community, we are responsible to our membership, and they have a right to know absolutely everything that we are working on at that point, and how things are going. And we do a very good job disclosing our financial statements and finances. As a nonprofit, we have to, but we also release our board meeting notes and things like that, which helps. I'm not sure. I'd be interested to look at the stats to see how many people read them. I think that would be helpful to get more people interested in what really is going on, and go from there. But it kind of leads to the questions you've been asking on sort of the community, the diversification, and how diverse our community is, and how to make sure everyone is involved. We do a lot of outreach, and in that we take a lot of Q&A as well. We need to continue to do that. I mean, everything's an evolution. It's not a revolution. We are evolving, and each year we want to do better than the year before, and each event we want to do better than the event before. And the more outreach we do, the better. The more community involvement we get, the better. The more they ask questions, the better informed they're going to be. So I think we keep going on the paths we've been going on, keep improving, keep listening to what people want as well, and adapting to it.
So you mentioned a bit about, the community, and kind of with one of your other colleagues that mentioned about this kind of succession, and we look at the staff, but how do you see that from a board perspective or even a community perspective, in terms of, you've had some people that have been around for quite a while who know the business, and we see a lot of them either on our board or running for the board. And then you may have the thought of having other people coming up who are, and not necessarily it's an age thing as much as it is an experience thing in the industry. How do you see us managing that so that there's some stability there moving forward, that we don't lose people to retirement, and then now we have to figure out how we're going to get other people involved? And you mentioned a little bit about outreach, so kind of wanted to give you a chance to maybe talk a little bit about that and how we would do that moving forward.
Yeah, so it's sort of a combination of some strategic planning, long-term planning of those issues, both on the board level and at the organization level. But it's also, so that can get you more of a tactical plan together for that. But ARIN, the RIRs in general, have a difficult path for this just inherently, because it's a niche job. It's a niche group. And so you need to find people that understand and have been involved in it enough to be able to fit into that. You have certain roles that need a lot of history, and other roles that don't. You have controls on any organization that anyone with good experience can come in and help tighten up the reporting or the structure for running it. But other aspects, it does require experience. Dealing with the governments requires some of the experience because it's not just it's not just a hallway conversation. So you need that rapport. And so building that requires teamwork. It requires finding people that are good at it, getting them involved, and getting them a part of the team to help work on it.
Excellent. So let me talk a little bit more about something more specific to you, which is your board service. And so obviously you're coming up on your first term on the ARIN board this cycle. And so you've served on several ARIN board committees from your bio. Which ones have you found the most rewarding, and which ones proved the most challenging, I guess, during your first couple of years here?
That's interesting. You didn't ask which ones I like the best.
I almost did. I said, let's make it a little.
That's interesting. Most rewarding is probably the governance committee. It is just a very critical aspect of any board. And ARIN has been through, an evolution in sort of its structure. We've tightened up a lot of the committee structures and reporting responsibilities and dates and expectations and things like that, which is going to long-term help ARIN run smoothly. It's been running smoothly, but smoother. Challenging risk is always challenging. It is a very difficult to be in an infrastructure play with such high value assets involved. It's an area that just constantly needs attention. We've done a very good job with it, but it is challenging because you don't want to miss anything. You don't want to make it's an area you don't want to make a mistake in, right? So it's probably the most challenging. I'll answer. You didn't ask. The one I like was probably the finance, because we've really done a good job. Nancy has really done a good job. Nancy and Brian and crew have done a very good job making that sort of an example to run a committee and to run an organization and to get the reporting, getting budgets and things early. It's unheard of, but we've done it. So it's been fun. It's the finance committee.
The finance committee. I do.
Right.
Love it. So, and one more question before we get to your closing remarks. So what value does the ARIN community get for 3 more years of Hank Kilmer on the board?
Look at me. My corny humor. No, I've put a lot of work into ARIN, and I want to continue to put a lot of work into ARIN. I think continuity and thought and pressure. I am not afraid to ask questions and to assume I don't know it all, and to have good discord with the rest of the board and with the staff, and get into the details when needed, and keep pushing things forward. I think there's a value in consistency. I was a big proponent of the RSA update. And I thought that was a very healthy thing for the community. The goal of getting, as much, if not all, of our address space under an agreement is something I champion and work hard at, and will continue to.
Okay. Well, as you can see by the timer, we are right at the 2 minutes. So I'm going to invite you to give some closing remarks to the ARIN community and give you the floor.
So I'd like to thank everybody involved, both in ARIN for setting this up, but also in the community. I just think entrusting me for the past 3 years has been an honor. I really have enjoyed it. I would love to continue it, but if not, I still think this is one of the highlights of my career, and it's been very rewarding. So I thank everybody, and I hope everybody shows up and votes for who they like, and let's get a good turnout this year. It's going to be a fun time in Dallas.
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Well, thank you, Hank, so much. Thank you for
Thank you.
entertaining my questions today and for taking the time out of your schedule to be able to kind of get in front of the ARIN community and let them get to know you a little bit better. So, but with that, thank you so much. And we are going to move on to our next
Thank you.
board candidate, which is James Lorimer.
Hi there, Michael.
All right. Hi, James. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. So as you've seen with the other candidates, I'm going to give you a few minutes, up to 3 minutes to introduce yourself to the community. So I'll give you the floor and then please introduce yourself.
Okay, great. Thanks for the opportunity, Michael. Really appreciate it. My name is James Lorimer. I'm currently the CFO at a publicly listed company called Data Communications Management. We're listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. I'm really kind of a newcomer to the ARIN community, but I think that I have a lot to bring from a few perspectives. One, I've been in this role for about 10 years, and we're largely a kind of a print company, but we are enabled by technology, and we've been through a pretty significant evolution in our business, using technology to differentiate ourselves in the market. Staying on top of IT security and cyber threats and things has been certainly a very important kind of part to us. Positioning ourselves in the market, and I think that that's an important area, particularly for ARIN to be considering. As well, I bring a lot of kind of leadership and governance and talent management experience to the role. I actually worked for about four years in executive recruitment. In my current role, I work closely with the compensation committee on their compensation analysis and proposals for not only executives but kind of leaders throughout the organization. So I think that's probably a relevant skill. And thirdly, throughout my history, I spent over 15 years in capital markets as an investment banker. A lot of that was kind of related around kind of governance and negotiations and working with various stakeholders to get things done at the end of the day. And so I think kind of my bit of a diverse background hopefully would be perceived as a benefit to the ARIN community.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. I know that you mentioned you're a newcomer, but you clearly have quite a bit of experience in other industries, in various industries coming into this. So let me ask you, what do you believe is the most critical oversight responsibility of the board, and how would you propose to kind of address that responsibility?
Yeah, I think probably the key thing is just good governance, and I think that's working with other board members and executives of ARIN to ensure that policies are in place, that stakeholders are being engaged with on a regular basis. As you mentioned earlier with one of the candidates, there's a lot of different kind of diverse stakeholders, and making sure that everyone has their representation kind of voiced or understood by the board, I think is important. Maintaining kind of a strong outreach to the community is certainly kind of a big part of that. And certainly, my experience so far to date seems that there are good, financial controls that I think is certainly kind of an area that I can provide some oversight capabilities, given my experience as a CFO for the past 10 years and over 20 years, I guess, of kind of financial strategy leadership.
Excellent. So you mentioned about the diverse stakeholders, and we talked about that with some of the other candidates. How do you manage a situation where there may be a direction for the board, but you have two large groups of constituents on opposite sides of that potential decision that the board has to make? So you have one side of the community that really wants the board to do one way, and the other side of the community wants to do it the other way. How do you balance that as a board member, or how do you come to the point of where you decide how your vote will be on how to make that decision?
Yeah, I think I've certainly had a very, very relevant similar experience in my current role as CFO. And while I'm not technically on the board of our company, I'm kind of an active participant in all the board meetings as well as subcommittee meetings. And I think what's kind of helped my success is really just being kind of well balanced, open to ideas, encouraging discussion, challenging from a productive perspective, not from a critical perspective, not from a accusatory kind of perspective, to make sure that all the right kind of research and information is brought to the table, and then encourage a good dialogue to make sure that both sides are understood. And at the end of the day, I think all the tough decisions we've made, we've been able to build consensus, and I think that's the most important thing, is to build that kind of camaraderie, that respect amongst your colleagues, in order to get your opinions heard, but also listen to those of others, and help in kind of getting everyone to a consensus.
Right. A constructive discourse is always a nice thing. Nice,
Yeah.
constructive
Yeah.
and respectful discourse, I guess, is always
And,
nice.
and respectful, yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So let me ask you then, with the committees, with your background, I assume one of the board committees that you'd be interested in is probably the finance committee, or as one of the said, the finance committee.
Yeah.
But are there other committees that you would have some interest in, and what do you think your participation on those committees would look like?
Sure. I guess my committees, at least committees that we have kind of at our current board, we have a compensation committee, kind of the HR and compensation committee, which is responsible for staying on top of compensation trends, succession planning, very kind of important things there, team development, making sure that management is doing the right things to prepare their successors in the organization, or if there are no good alternatives, to start to build a network of possible replacements if as and when needed. Kind of overall corporate governance has been a long-standing kind of strength and experience level of mine. I've over the years dealt with different kind of complex regulatory authorities, everything from securities commissions to pension regulatory bodies to auditors, of course, and then also the audit committee, and I think that's certainly a role that I can bring a lot of experience to in terms of oversight and helping to run kind of an efficient finance organization, making sure that we work closely with company or the organization's auditors to make sure that disclosure is transparent and open and timely, and also kind of keeping up with trends and frankly staying ahead of trends. In my role, we've had a number of accounting changes over the past few years that always kind of seem to confound and confuse folks. So trying to kind of make sense of those and make sure that the kind of common person understands what you're trying to achieve.
Those accounting things are never confusing at all, ever, right?
No, never.
Well, let me talk then about one thing that you had mentioned before, because you said that you've looked at kind of emerging technologies, and cybersecurity is an issue, as one of the things we need to focus on. So do you see any trends? Because when I talk about committees, well, one of our committees is risk and cybersecurity. And do you see any cybersecurity trends that you think would be important for the ARIN board and ARIN community to keep an eye on moving forward, given what we do?
Yeah, certainly, cyber threats and phishing attacks and spam attacks are certainly something that we kind of live with on a day-to-day basis. At our company, we've implemented, we think, a very strong kind of IT infrastructure and security protocol. I work closely with our IT leaders and security team to make sure that threats are managed and assessed. Kind of routing security certainly for ARIN is something that's big. And, looking at the different kind of evolving technologies and kind of being on top of them. ICP2 was discussed earlier. There's a lot going on in the overall market, and I think everyone is concerned about a big cyber attack, and so anything that ARIN can do to instill confidence and make sure that threats are taken seriously, and then protocols are evolving kind of ahead of the bad actors that are out there.
Okay. So I'm going to ask one more question before we get to the closing remarks part, as we're coming up on time. You mentioned being a newcomer a bit to the ARIN community. So I'll just ask the straightforward question. What brought you here? What brought you to throw your hat in the ring for the ARIN board, and what's the motivation to come and serve the ARIN community in this capacity?
Sure, a really good question, Michael. I've had some exposure to ARIN. We made a major acquisition 2 years ago, I guess, that kind of got us a little bit closer into this whole internet registry world, and hence why kind of IT security and cyber threats are so relevant to me. Frankly, I've had a long career. I still got a few good years ahead of me as a worker, as a CFO. But thought this would be an interesting opportunity for me to start to kind of give back to the world, and I think it's kind of an interesting opportunity for me to leverage my kind of financial skills and acumen, my governance background, as well as some of the experience I've had kind of managing massive change in a business. And we certainly know that there's a lot of kind of global trends that are evolving as we look at some of the other RARs, and making sure that the overall kind of global community is strong. And so I think it looks like a pretty interesting challenge for me, and I love challenges.
Excellent. Well, as we're coming up on almost the 2-minute mark, I'm going to invite you to give some closing remarks to the community, and I'll give you the floor.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael. Very excited to have this opportunity to meet with many of my kind of fellow candidates, as well as present to the community. I think I bring some strong experience, kind of outside the ARIN world, in financial oversight, strategic direction, governance and compliance, and also kind of talent development and succession planning. I think those are all kind of themes that are very relevant to ARIN, and hope that I can be a contributor to the community going forward.
All right. Well, thank you so much, James. It's great to have you. Thank you so much for your time to participate in this forum for the ARIN community. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a bit better, and definitely wish you luck on the election. But with that, we will say goodbye. Have a good day, and I will move on to our next candidate, which is Rob Seastrom.
Am I on?
You are on.
Looks
Hi,
like
Rob.
I'm on. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Are you tired of everybody asking you how you are when you answered that for the last person?
Well, I'm glad that I can say that I'm doing well. It would be probably worse if the answer was not that way. So,
yes.
But all right, Rob. Well, welcome. And as you've seen with the others, I'm going to provide you with an introductory time to be able for you to introduce yourself to the community, make some introductory remarks, and then we'll get into a Q&A session. So with that, I will invite you to take up to 3 minutes to introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
All righty, great. Yeah, I'm Rob Seastrom, or RS. I've served as volunteer for ARIN for over 20 years, on the advisory council from 2004 to 2022, and more recently on the board of trustees since 2022. I was on the NANOG steering committee as we turned into a board and set the trajectory to evolve from an event that was run by Merit to the standalone nonprofit you see today. My career has been a sequence of building small and not so small ISPs, including pioneering ISPs in Japan and the Republic of Georgia, building data centers, operating top-level domain DNS services. I'm a crypto officer for DNSSEC, signing the root and preparing to pass the torch on that in November after 15 years of service. Over 5 years ago, my career pivoted. After decades working predominantly at smaller organizations designing and building infrastructure, I began working in oversight and risk management capacity at a very large bank. So I was contextualizing technology and business risk for senior leadership. But outside of my day job, I kept my hands dirty, looking after networking and routing side for a very small colocation provider. I have deep understanding of the technical constraints as well as the business and political constraints of ARIN's mission. During my first term on the ARIN Board of Trustees, I leveraged that practical experience to contribute to ARIN's governance via service on the Risk and Cybersecurity Committee, which I chaired for 2 years out of my 3-year term, as well as on the Finance Committee. And so I'm here to ask for your vote to be on the Board of Trustees for another 3 years.
All right. Well, thank you, RS, for that. And let's get into some questions here. So as I've asked some of the others, I think you'll know one of my first questions is going to be, what do you see as maybe 1 or 2 of the main issues facing ARIN in the next 5 years? And how would you seek to address that from a kind of strategic perspective?
Oh, I came equipped with 4, and
Oh, great.
I will call them out, and I'll be a man of few words here. Registry accuracy. When you get right down to it, the registry is ARIN's whole reason for existence. Things like risk management, financials, RPKI, these are only tools to support the main mission, which is providing a source of truth for the internet about what resources are assigned to who. And we are on the key to that is formalizing the relationship between legacy resource holders and ARIN, and we're on the cusp of hitting our self-set goal of 95% of number of resources under RSA, which is thrilling to me. The second thing is internet governance issues and ICP2 BIS. Others have talked about ICP2 BIS. I see this as key to the credibility of the RIR system on the global stage. And following right up on that is going to be evolving our controls internally to set the gold standard to actually exceed the high bar that we set in ICP2 BIS for accountability, transparency, and honestly, we do not serve our constituency if we don't plan for failure, and that includes contemplating our own. You have to plan for the unseen, no matter how remote it might be. So we govern ourselves as we govern others. Succession for leadership. You know, I've given some thought to slightly early retirement myself. I note that one of my fellow candidates is already retired, and I could never begrudge anyone wanting to enjoy a fun retirement. Yet our strength of long tenure is also a weakness. We need to make sure that we're ready for succession of people and finding candidates who are as mission-oriented and dedicated as the current cohort, that's a tall order. We have a really, really good mission-oriented crew right here. And whether we find the next leadership inside or outside the organization, we need to be ready to do that. And lastly, ARIN has a lasting reputation problem. There's a perception out there that hasn't been true in decades that we're difficult to work with, and it's simply not so. I've taken it as a personal mission, whether on the AC or on the board, to do that personal outreach. Whenever someone makes an outdated claim that we're the organization of no, I take exception to it. I'm pleased to report that directionally we're headed the right way. And that's not just a matter of outreach. That's a matter of our policy process working. And our bottom-up policy process makes ARIN more accessible.
All right, well, let's go into a little bit of what you mentioned. And, you know, as staff, let's go for that side. From staff side, from me, yes, we do want ARIN to be the easiest one to work with, not a hard company to work with. So how do you combat that? Like, how do you change people's minds? I mean, obviously from an oversight with the staff, we're trying to improve our services, improve our customer service all the time. But how do you overcome that when you say it's a long-standing reputational kind of thing that people have held for probably from like decades ago? How do you combat that? How do you change people's minds from that?
One of the things I've looked at for ages is where do we have outdated assumptions that are no longer stand up to scrutiny in the current environment. The last policy proposal that I authored before leaving the AC, and I had to recuse myself from evaluating it when I was on the board on the basis that I had written it when I was on the AC and then it came up to the board for us, was to substantially eliminate demonstrated need for an autonomous system number, because we'd evolved from having only 65,000 of them to having 4 billion of them. And so the conservation mandate no longer made any sense. If your organization thinks they need one, they probably do. And always looking at our policies and processes and saying, do they fit the current reality, uh, is huge.
Okay. Let me pivot to another thing you mentioned, which was the most important thing for ARIN is registry accuracy. So what is the largest hurdle to registry accuracy, or maybe it's not even a hurdle as much as it a risk? What would you say is the biggest thing to worry about in terms of registry accuracy?
So there is only a moderate stick out there with folks who are not under a registration services agreement of some sort. But there's a huge carrot out there in the form of RPKI and other, pardon me, services that are developing that you can't access unless you formalize your relationship with ARIN, which is important because we're not just being a stick in the mud about this. We're saying that we're making an attestation and cryptographically signing it that these resources are yours. We can hardly do that for resources that we don't actually have a formalized relationship with the resource holder. So I think that continuing along the current path and figuring out where the holdouts are and where their sticking points are is key, and that we do not stand on this is not the hill that we want to die on and be inflexible on. That being flexible with making things possible for the remaining holdouts to sign, whether it's concerns about property rights, whether it's concerns about indemnification. Our Board of Regents won't allow us to sign this agreement. That sort of thing, we have to understand that other organizations have risk mitigation concerns as well, and we need to be able to meet them in the interests of serving the community through making the registry more strong and correct.
Do you see it possible for us to get to 100% since we are close to our self-imposed goal of 95%?
Well, we're coming up to 95%, which in my world is 1 9. How many nines do you want? 100.000%. I don't think that's a reasonable goal. But getting to 2 9s, getting to 99% from 95, there's a lot of work to do that. I think it's worthwhile.
Okay.
Getting to 3 or 4, part of our risk discussion that we have all the time is what's an acceptable level of risk. And when we talk about remediating risk beyond what's an acceptable level of risk, what we're doing is actually wasting resources that could better be applied to something else. And so I think it's reasonable to say that we get to 2 9s. 3 is probably a stretch.
Okay. You mentioned before your long-term service on the ARIN Advisory Council and your very active service there with regard to policy development. What was the biggest adjustment you would say moving from the Advisory Council to the ARIN Board of Trustees?
I was always cautious to avoid over participation in the public debate over policy. Everybody attributes God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason to some elderly relative of theirs. And I'm sure we've all heard that. But I looked at my role in that as being, we talk a lot inside the room for the AC and much less outside the room for the AC. When I pivoted to the board, there's very, very little in the way of policy development and a whole lot in the way of responsibility to the other things that make the organization strong. And so I would say that I was prepared for that, and I understood that going in, and that you can say that you're prepared for that on your way in, but then actually living it is a bit of an adjustment to make.
Okay. All right, so we're almost to the end of our time, and we got about 1 minute 20 that I want to ask one more question. So what what value will the ARIN community have with 3 more years of Rob Seastrom on the ARIN board if you were to be elected?
Well, I think my reputation and my history speaks for itself. One thing that I can tell you that I will not be doing immediately in my next term is when I talked to Peter Harrison, who was my predecessor for chairing the Risk and Cybersecurity Committee. He had served for 3 years and opined that 3 was a year too long and it should be 2. And I am preparing to pass the torch and remain on the committee. This is part of my own succession planning. This is, I want to have other people on the Risk and Cybersecurity Committee and on the board who have that level of experience and exposure to formal risk governance.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for answering my questions. Just as everybody else, I'm going to allow you to have the last 2 minutes to yourself to be able to give some closing remarks to the ARIN community. So the floor is yours.
Well, some people ask me, what has kept you volunteering for ARIN for, as long as you have, over 2 decades? And the answer is this is my community, this is my people. And making the internet work better is something that we can all do in our own small way. And this has been my small way, and I'd like to continue doing that. And it has been quite rewarding and an honor, and I'm humbled to that you trust me. And I hope that the community will see it to elect me to another 3 years on the ARIN Board of Trustees. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, RS. And thank you for your time today. Thank you for appearing here at the forum and answering my questions and presenting yourself to the community. I wish you best of luck with the election. And with that, we'll move on to our next and final candidate. So thank you,
Michael.
All right. And we have one more person, which is Mark Thorpe. All right. Hi, Mark.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me, Michael?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Fantastic. And I hate to say it, but how are you doing? You've been through a whole slate of candidates. So how are you really doing after all these?
Should I change my answer? Should I change my answer?
No. Keep it the same. Keep it the
Well,
same.
I'm doing well. So, and so we've come to you, which you are the final candidate for us to hear from, but definitely not the least. So we want to, follow the same format. So, Mark, I'm going to provide you with up to 3 minutes to introduce yourself to the community, and then we'll have a fun time with some Q&A. So the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you for that, Michael. And thank you to your team and to yourself for hosting us and allowing us this opportunity to share a little bit about our background and for the community to learn something about us. Hello, members of the ARIN community. Thank you for the opportunity to share my background with you today and to respectfully ask for your vote. I am Mark Thorpe and I'm a candidate for the Board of Trustees. I am a C-level finance executive, a CPA, and a former Big Four consultant for the KPMG, and I spent over 20 plus years building resilient, scalable technology and technology-related companies such as Citrix Systems, Vela Cloud Networks, and Airgo. I see ARIN as the cornerstone of the internet's infrastructure and a vital steward of public resources with a profound responsibility to its member community. I see the board's primary role as one of diligent oversight and its duty to build and maintain financial strength, operational integrity, and strategic foresight to sustain ARIN's mission into the future. I offer my expertise in financial stewardship, risk management, and corporate governance in support of ARIN's long-term success and organizational excellence, and that remains a stable and trusted steward for this community. My career overlaps with some of the industries that ARIN supports, such as networking infrastructure. As the VP of Finance for Vela Cloud Networks, a pioneer in SD-WAN, I saw firsthand how a stable, well-managed internet registry helps to enable innovation. And as a corporate leader, I interacted with companies where the information superhighway was critical to their existence. Therefore, my perspective is that of a leader who understands the role of ARIN and the operational demands placed on the organizations that it serves. You know what it takes to build a fiscally sound organization from the ground up. At Vela Cloud, I help build the organization's finance, administrative, and sales app infrastructure and help scale the company from zero revenue to its $500 million acquisition by VMware. My experience also covers the complexities associated with operating as a public company. I helped Ergo, a medtech device company, become IPO ready, operate under intense scrutiny of public company reporting and governance standards, and had direct line reporting to the company's board of directors via its audit committee. That means I bring more than budget oversight to the table. And beyond financial strategy, I've helped to build resilient organizations through robust risk management and strong internal controls. And I've been responsible for building the pre and post IPO accounting function and implementing the rigorous SOX compliant financial controls required of a public company. My focus will be on strengthening the processes that protect ARIN's critical assets, ensuring operational stability, and reinforcing ARIN's integrity.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Mark. And let's get into a few questions. But as you probably saw from the other candidates, the first one might be pretty obvious. But I'm going to ask you, what are one or two things that you think are some major items that will be facing the ARIN board in the next 5 years? And that how would you address them if you were so elected to be able to serve the community?
So thank you for that, Michael. So not necessarily in order of importance, but I think there are a number of key factors, right? There is cybersecurity. There is internally just the whole IT security from an ARIN perspective. So both internal and external. I think governance is one of the issues as well. Succession planning, I think, is key. I think some of the other candidates may have mentioned something similar to that as well. And then I think strategic direction. And then last but not least, how can we end the conversation without saying AI and what will AI do or not do over not just the next 5 years, but tomorrow and the next month and the next 30 days. So those are some of the key issues. And so I would start first with strategic direction, is understanding where do we fit, understanding where we're headed and how we're going to get there. I think one of the challenges that we face, and why I mentioned strategic direction, is all about relevance. Will we continue to be relevant in the future? Our mission, is it still relevant in the next year, in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, and in the next 5 years? And a part of that is really understanding how are we serving our members? Are we serving members to the best of our capacity? Are there technologies that we are thinking about, technologies that exist today, or technologies that will exist that may make what we do today obsolete? So I think really drilling into that and understanding the risk associated with that and pre-planning for that. So there are the risks that we can obviously plan for, the known risks, and then there are the unknown risks. And for the unknown risk, right, that is why you have the infrastructure in place that when something happens, you have the ability to react and act accordingly.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Your focus on risk is not surprisingly something that is near and dear to my heart as general counsel. So I do appreciate the comments on that. How would you say that the board itself should kind of take their first steps in really managing that risk? Like what are some things that you can bring if you were elected to the board that you would suggest for the ARIN board to do that maybe would help address risk profiles? I mean, we have a risk and cyber committee. They do a lot of work in that field, but what do you think if you were to kind of propose, or you got on the board, what would you say are some steps that they should take with regard to the risk management?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So here's one example at a company that we took public. And as an attorney, Michael, I think you very well understand and appreciate this, which is you have to write an S1. And in writing the S1, you have to let the public know and understand the challenges that the company faces. And there are a myriad of risks, right? It's the whole kitchen sink that gets thrown in. But ultimately, you are looking at the environment in which you operate. You're looking at what your competitors are doing. You're looking at the known threats. And you're putting forward a plan that says, hey, I cannot get all of these things, but what steps can I put in place to mitigate some of these risks? So here's one really simple concept. You've got to have general liability insurance, right? That's pretty straightforward. But then you start peeling back the layer. Well, how much, what type, who do I insure with? Do I self-insure? Do I not self-insure? And so on and so forth. And so I think a part of it is understanding the environment in which you are operating in. Also getting board members and senior management to rank right, where those risks are from a priority standpoint, and ensuring that the ones that are at the top of the list, that those things are dealt with, upfront and immediate. My assumption, Michael, is that at this point, ARIN has done a pretty good job of understanding and narrowing those risks and having that risk management process in place. The question is frequency. The question is, how are we actually prioritizing and reprioritizing? And then once we do that, how are we ensuring and stress testing our assumptions around those risks? Then lastly, I think it's how are we benchmarking ourselves against other organizations, not just not-for-profit organizations, but organizations that are operating in either directly in the space and environment in which we operate in, or tangentially to the environment in which we're operating. What are they facing? What are they actually doing to mitigate risk in those situations?
Um, so I have kind of two follow-up questions to that, but one of them is you mentioned your background in quite a variety of areas, and you've obviously worked for some for-profit companies, and you may have some experience as well with the nonprofit side of things. So what do you think in terms of what value can be brought to ARIN with your experience from the for-profit companies that maybe something from a nonprofit perspective would be something important, something that could be helpful or advantageous that you can bring from your past experience?
So one of the things that I mentioned earlier on when you asked about the risk that ARIN would actually face in the next 5 years or so, I think succession planning is one thing that's important. And succession planning isn't just, hey, the senior leaders of the company. I think succession planning is, runs from the top to the bottom of the organization. And it is, first of all, it starts with, ensuring that we're hiring the best of the best. It's also putting in place development plans in place so that folks can progress. And it is also ensuring that for key and critical leaders of the organization, that there is a backup plan, right, for those leaders. But I think it's also, again, I'd get back, Michael, to also benchmarking and measuring ourselves against best of breed entities, right? What are world-class companies and entities doing from a succession planning? And the reason why I say succession planning is it's not enough to just have a plan. It's not enough to just have a mission. It requires capable, competent individuals to carry out that mission. But no one person can execute on that mission. It takes a village for this to happen. You need the right legal folks. You need the right risk management folks. You need the right finance folks. You need president, CEO of the organization. And then as you layer down in the organization, you need the right amount of dedication and commitment to continue to move things forward. But I also layer on top of that is the things we do on a daily basis, the things that, so customer service is an example, right? Do we have best of breed? How are we making sure that we are delivering to our customers what they need on a timely basis in the best manner? And so that comes back to ensuring that we have, the best people in the right seats within the organization. So succession is not just about having a plan for when someone retires. I think it is much more holistic about how the organization is running, how the organization is ensuring that it's got the right people in the right seats and executing on the company's strategic priorities.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to ask you one more question before we get to our closing remarks part. But since you said it and you brought it up at the very end, AI. So how do you feel about AI in terms of ARIN's business and what we do, and how will that affect it? Positive, negative, tools to use, things to be avoided. How do you see AI with regard to what ARIN does?
So I did take the liberty of checking in with a number of my more technical colleagues and asking that question. And I've sort of separated between internal and external. From an internal standpoint, I think the question is how can we leverage AI to do more, to be more efficient, to go faster. I don't necessarily see AI as a replacement. I see it as a tool that actually helps us to focus on the more value-added aspect of our work. So, for example, Michael, contracts. I know you've been at this for a while, but I'm sure that you don't like reading contracts every single day, or the folks on your team. And so can AI do a quick summary? and identify the risk. It doesn't take away from the need to read a contract, but it does help and assist. I'd say the same thing on the finance function as well, right? I say the same thing on the customer service side, right? So there is the use of AI for empowerment and for productivity. The other side of this is, I'll confess that I don't know what the answer is, and that is as we see the proliferation of AIs, we see the proliferation of additional applications, AI applications, as we see the proliferation of data centers and more devices and so on and so forth. I can't say one way or another whether or not this is good or bad, or maybe it's a nothing burger for ARIN or not. And so I think the real question is, this is something that I think we have to stay on top of and really understand how this may or may not fundamentally change the way we think about the business and the way that we think about the organization today. But it is definitely something that we should be aware of and keep our eyes on.
Excellent. Well, not to rush too much, but you about a minute and a half left to be able to give some closing remarks to the community. And I'll let you do that now.
All right, thank you. All right, so thank you, Michael. Thank you, ARIN team, and thank you, ARIN community. And thank you and best of luck to the fellow candidates. I'm new to ARIN, but not so new to technology and the technology space. I respectfully request that you please take a moment to review the candidate support attestation for more information regarding my character and my background. My role as a board trustee is to bring governance-focused perspective to the boardroom and to ARIN. I will help to advance the community's priorities and champion the highest standards of fiscal prudence and transparent financial reporting. And further, my goal is to help support and champion ARIN's policy development process and its technical operations. Along with fellow trustees, my aim is to ensure key decisions are weighed against ARIN's long-term financial health and to work to ensure our risk management strategies are comprehensive and promote accountability. In conclusion, I offer a distinct yet complementary skill set to the Board of Trustees. My experience as a CFO with experience in financial management, corporate governance, and risk management will provide a holistic oversight structure that reinforces ARIN's technical and policy strength. I would be honored to earn your trust and your vote. Thank you, and I look forward to meeting and speak with some of you in Dallas in a few weeks.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Mark. Obviously joking, but you didn't realize I was an AI general counsel, just doing all these questions right now. So we don't have a Sora badge that popped up, so I think we're all good right there. So, but thank you so much for your time and taking time out of your schedule. I know you're very busy to be able to appear here in front of the ARIN community. Wish you the best of luck with the campaign, and thank you so much. So
thank you. Look forward to seeing you in person in Dallas soon. Take care.
Thank you. All right, everybody. So we are at the end of our board candidate forum. Just wanted to do a few thank yous to both the candidates that have appeared here. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here and be part of this process. We think it's an excellent opportunity to be able to introduce yourself to the ARIN community, for the community to be able to get to know you a little bit better and to really hear your thoughts on some of the issues that will be facing the ARIN board over the next few years. I also want to thank the community and those of you that are either here live and we're watching the forum today, or also those that will be viewing this, the recording that we'll be posting. You know, this is very important for everybody to take a look at and to really get to know the candidates. Our hope here was to have an engaging session and to hopefully help you have a more informed vote when you do go to the voting polls. Want to especially thank the team, the ARIN staff team, for putting this together. You know, it may seem very smooth, but this is all just due to the hard work of the team, particularly in our communications department, who have set everything up here. So thank you so much to Hollis and her team for putting this together. And with that, you know, I'm going to pass this back over to Hollis, who has some reminders. But again, thank you so much to everybody. I really enjoyed the time to be able to get to know our candidates, and I hope all of you have a wonderful time. And good luck to everyone. I know that it is a hard choice for our voting community. You have some very good candidates here to choose from. So thankfully, I don't actually have a vote, so I don't have to make that decision. But passing out to Hollis, thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you to our candidates. And thank you to everyone who chose to join us today. As mentioned, this recording will be posted online, and there will be a link available from the ARIN Elections website. So that'll be accessible. You're also welcome to view candidate bios and submit or review statements of support that have been submitted all the way up and through the election. With that, just a couple of election-specific reminders. If you are from a general member organization that is eligible to vote in this year's election, the deadline to update voting contacts is the 23rd of October at 3 p.m. So if you are not sure, now is a good time to go online and check. Make sure that you've got the right contact listed to vote, so that they are able to access the ballot when voting opens on the 30th of October. I will note also on the 30th during ARIN 56, we will be playing all of the candidate speeches during the ARIN 56 meeting in Arlington. So you'll be able to view those then. They will also be linked on the ARIN Elections website for view there for folks that aren't perhaps with us either in person or online in Arlington. Elections will be open from the 30th until November 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and winners will be announced on the 14th of November. Once again, ARIN relies on the engaged involvement of its community, its members, its voters, and is very thankful for the folks that have stood up and displayed their willingness to serve the ARIN community as members of the board and for taking time out to be here with us today. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing folks in Arlington in a few weeks if you're joining us there in person or online. We're looking forward to a great meeting and a successful election. So have a great day, everyone.